that export capability turned on. All right. Another one's called Game Salad. You see there's several of these, all very similar. They're all leveraging HTML5 and JavaScript in the code generation, but the act of building the game is drag and drop. That's one of the nice things about these tools. You're not in the code. If you're a game developer, you want to focus on the artwork, the assets, the sound, the gameplay, the heads-up display, the layers, things like that. That's what these tools are good at. They give you an IDE, you lay everything out, you say what the rules are of the game, and then you test it in the browser, and when something doesn't work just right, you don't go change code, you're back into their tool and you're modifying properties of objects and things of that sort. It's all visual. If you are into the code, then another choice is Create.js. This is a suite of JavaScript libraries that help you build games. There's one example out there that does a complete implementation of, it's got to be about 15 or 20 different Atari games. All done they run in the browser. They've also been ported to Windows 8. And this is the bit.ly. It's kind of cryptic. I didn't come up with a proper name, but it's bit.ly/R3, lowercase v, 2, capital D, capital H. And at least you'll get to the website and you can check out all the apps there that have been built with Create.js. There's also a member of the team built the Catapult Wars and did it with Create.js and put that into the Windows 8 store, and there's the bit.ly for that if you're interested in reading up on how that was done. I'll make these slides available too. Another game development framework is Impact.js. And the guy I told you about him earlier, Jesse Freeman, who's on my team, he's in New York. He wrote the book called HTML5 Game Development. It's all about how to build HTML5 games using Impact.js. He's just got tons of sample code online. He's got a book. He is quite good, and he has a bunch of games in the store right now. His favorite is he likes that old 8-bit look and feel to the artwork. So he creates a lot of his own artwork and builds these games using HTML5 and JavaScript, and he gets them running in the browser, and then he gets them running on Windows, and now he's porting them to the phone. So just to close out, so I'm right at time, I want to make sure you know about DreamSpark. Now, if you go to dreamspark.com, you could register there, but it sounds like what you should do is find out the URL for the Harvard DreamSpark site. And if you go in there, you can get Windows, you can get Visual Studio, you can get SQL Server, you can get, everything but an Xbox. All right, you can get basically all of our stuff there. So download the development tools, download the SDKs. You also get a free Windows 8 and a free Windows Phone developer account. That's a $150 value. All right, so students get accounts for free. I want to make sure you guys get access to that. App Builder is our site for developers. If you go there and register, build.windowsstore.com, you can earn points. You can register your apps. They'll send you on some quests, and you'll earn points to be able to win stuff. There's also a ton of training material up there if you're looking for either apps or games. Some other training I found that might be really applicable to what you're doing now is there is a C# Fundamentals online course, set of videos, and then there's also Windows Phone 8 for beginners. So if you're just getting into this space, you just want, hey, I just need to learn some C# and I need to just get started with Windows Phone, those two resources are fantastic. And then the work I was showing you is a project that my team did called API Mash, which is at aka.ms/API Mash, and that will take you to GitHub. So we post all of our stuff up on GitHub. So we've got a bunch of starter kits up there. You scroll down, we have starter kits for Windows and for Windows Phone, and we're actually expanding this list. So everything you see here is being ported over to phone. But we've got Active Access, a Chuck Norris starter kit, Earthquakes and Bing Maps, Edmunds, Facebook, Foursquare, Instagram, Meetup, Messier Sky Objects, Rotten Tomatoes, Stack Exchange, Tumblr, Twitter, Univision, Wikipedia, World of Warcraft, Yelp, and ESPN. So that's all of these are all functional Windows 8 apps with the code. And everything I showed you, that's the pattern they're all using. That whole open data API, call, deserialize, bind to the UI. If you're interested in seeing how you get started building for Windows 8 and for Windows Phone, these are fantastic resources here, all built by my team. So it's all free. It's up on GitHub. The way to do it, you just go to that site and click the download zip file. So we also include a lab workbook. There's 3 lab workbooks in there to just kind of take you through how to get started with this stuff. All right? So, wanted to make sure you were aware of that. And with that, thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Bob. We've indeed posted at cs76.net instructions for how you can get access to a DreamSpark account. So after tonight, you can get that, and then we'll post the slides later tonight.
Fantastic.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Why don't we go ahead and take a few-minute break here while Dan gets set up, and then we'll transition to the third and final platform for the evening, Android. All right, we are back. So the third act here is Dan Armendariz, who actually started this class several years ago. So the origins of S76 can be traced back to him and a colleague of his, and it was I who came along a year or so after that I finally got involved. So everything you've seen thus far is all traced back to Dan. So Dan's going to take a look at Android development with us, and without further ado, Dan Armendariz.
Thanks. Hi, everyone. It's nice to be back, so to speak, even though in the context, from where you're sitting, it doesn't really seem that way. The class was very different back then, just like mobile development has really evolved over the years. In fact, in the past year, since the last time that I actually co-taught this class with David, Android development has gotten a lot better, at least in the initial setup. And so we're going to talk about, as quickly as we can, we're going to try to shoehorn what I used to put 4 weeks worth of content into 1 hour. So please allow me some leeway as I go a little quickly through some things. Of course, if you have any questions, feel free to interrupt at any time. And hopefully we'll be able to get you guys comfortable in such a way that you'll be able to do some Android development as soon as you go home. So just so that I can sort of get a sense of where everybody is, how many of you use an iOS device as your, say, primary phone, an iPhone? That's just about everybody. Now, are there any of you that use an Android device as your primary phone? OK. So for those of you that have your hands up, is that constant? Do you always use that device rather than an iOS device? All right, so for those of you that had your hands up, you probably are familiar with the differences between the experience of an Android device and an iOS device. And this is actually really important, is that in order to develop on one of these platforms, it really is useful to have a sense of what that platform is actually like to be able to use it. And so if you are serious about actually doing cross-platform work, just to reiterate comments that Bob made in the first hour, it's really helpful to get a sense of that experience and how you will actually want to replicate that on this other device. And even though Android is considered to be the primary competitor to iOS, it's really difficult to put them, I think, on that same sort of comparison. They operate in very different ways. They have very different reasonings behind very different decisions that went into their implementation. And there's a lot of maybe, let's see, what is the proper word to use here? There's perhaps a lot of difference between the two and a lot of confusion between the two that really just arise from these sort of basic differences, that arose initially from when Google first started developing Android and when Apple first started developing iPhone and iOS. So this is actually pretty important for us as well as developers. So for us as developers, what are some of the differences that we typically hear about about developing for iOS versus developing for Android? So if you were to go onto a tech blog and read the comments that people always post whenever Apple or whenever Google updates one of their hardware devices, people always complain about the same sorts of things, right? What are these differences? What do Android users dislike about iPhones, and what do iPhone users dislike about Android? Any ideas? Yeah.
Android users dislike how, as a developer,
So perhaps if I could summarize that in a way to say that people consider Android to be a little bit more open than iOS. And so that is certainly true in many respects, even for us as developers. When you create a developer account with Google, you pay a one-time $25 fee. You have an account with them. Basically, that $25 fee is to weed out people that just want to create